to Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are refining and redefining the sales game by equipping you with the tools you need to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Listening to the podcast is only going to get you so far. Why not take your game to the next level? Check out Power Producer Basecamp on killingcommercial.com today.
Tactical skills that'll help you provide deliverable value to your clients and prospects.
Want to have the sweet swag that we send out from the Power Producers podcast for your clients and employees? Check out policyt.com today.
And action items that you can provide to take your prospects and clients to the next level.
Want to create an online presence but don't know how to start? Check out crushingcontent.com. It's done for you, so all you have to do is show up.
This is Power Producers Shop Talk, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are wrapping up our series on building a remote team and all the things that go with it with the team from Insurance Futures. And we're going to wrap it up by talking about something that, quite honestly, is really important for producers, too. I mean, this just doesn't apply to remote work. It applies to being good at sales and getting better at sales and then leading people who are in sales in your organization. And I'm talking about listening to calls and role play. Like, listening to calls is probably the easier part. I think people, get into a role play situation and it's a little awkward, maybe somewhat humorous, but I also think you can have fun with it. But the bottom line is, if you can take that stuff seriously, it really will help you as you're going out as a producer specifically. And I can only imagine it helps you as you're building your team and setting expectations inside of your organization as well. And I can, remember times where I would laugh or try and make it humorous and didn't take it as seriously, but there's plenty of times now with one-on-one coaching with people inside Killing Commercial or Power Producer Basecamp where we're doing a coaching call and they'll say, I'm struggling with this. And I'll immediately say, fine, let's role play it. You're going to be the producer. I'm going to be the gatekeeper, or vice versa. And let's see how you would overcome the objection with me. And I'm going to throw everything at you but the kitchen sink. And you can do the same thing to me and see how I would overcome it. But you know what? As you do that and you become more comfortable with it, the way that you do things, the language that you use, everything else starts to become second nature. And then all of a sudden it's a habit. So, I think that role playing is important. I think that listening to calls so that you understand what your work product looks like, that your client base and your prospect base is seeing, is really important. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my son, he's 7. He's just getting into basketball. He loves basketball. I'm coaching him this year. And so he wants to know how to do everything. And the other day I was trying to teach him, when you shoot the ball, it should roll off your hands and it should rotate. Right. And I showed him and he's like, oh, do it again. And I kept showing him again and again and again. And he wasn't understanding. And so then what I had to do, instead of me just showing him, I said, all right, grab the ball. Let's go outside. And I just let him try it over and over and over again and course corrected a few times, like, no, put your hand here, put this hand here. And with time, he was able to do it himself instead of just watching me. Right. And so I tell this story to say really what we always talk about when we talk to our sales team about listening to calls and role play is it's the reps. You have to get in and actually do it yourself to be able to learn. We can have our sales calls and, we can pull in all these different philosophies and tell you why it works and show examples of everybody. And it sounds really great, but until you actually get in there and do it, you're not going to get as good as you can. You got to put in the reps. And so that's what we realized, Jeremy and I, probably about a year ago, we realized, okay, we need to start, 1, listening to calls and correcting them, but 2, kind of like you said, David, a little more important, role playing, giving them the opportunity to do it where we can course correct right away rather than having their only experience and the only time they do it is live on the spot.
David, I relate this to watching film, and I know that you can feel this one, right? Is when I played basketball, or even it was funny when I coached a few years ago, I coached high school JV, is, a player thought they made a good play, a good pass. They thought they were there on help defense, whatever. And then you turn the film on and all of a sudden reality is there, right? So it's like watching film, watching reveals the truth, listening to calls reveals the truth. Someone might think they're hitting the key points every time and they're doing great, and then you listen to it and you realize, oh, okay, maybe I'm not doing as well as I thought I was.
Yeah, I mean, I've even dealt with this with people inside Killing Commercial and Power Producer Base Camp. I'll have an agency principal call up and say, I don't understand what's going on. You know, we're getting our reps, we're making all of our calls, you know, we're dialing the number of times that I feel like we should be dialing, but we're just not making forward progress. And sometimes it's so second nature to me that I just don't even think about asking the question. I'll immediately start going into brain surgery to figure out, you know, what could possibly be going on with scripting or whatever else. When the reality is, the question I need to ask first is, have you been listening to the calls? How many of the calls have you listened to? What are you hearing? Most people don't take the time to go back and listen to the calls. Like they don't, they want to complain that they're not getting telemarketing appointments. They want to complain that their producers aren't booking appointments, but they're not actually taking a block of time out of their schedule to sit and listen to the recorded calls to then coach, correct, congratulate, whatever the person that they're you know, reviewing their work product. And I mean, I think that's something that's really important, and you can't do too much of it. I mean, I block an hour every Friday afternoon. It's one of the last things I do is I wrap up my week, but I want to hear what my team sounds like on the phone, and I want to make sure that we go into the weekend with a chance to reflect on whatever that feedback is. But there's very few Fridays that I go by without sitting and listening to call recordings for that reason. And I think it's really especially important for you know, producers specifically. If you're not getting people on your calendar, then you need to figure out why. And a lot of the times it has to do with what's going on inside your calls. Just as important though is listening to them to try and figure out ways to improve. I think we also need to do a better job of saving calls that were 100% right, like that ended in a booked appointment or ended in the result that we wanted to, because it's always good when you get into a slump to go back and figure out what you were doing when you weren't in that slump. And I mean, again, I grew up playing sports too. Think about what it's like today. We didn't have the technology when I was, you know, growing up playing baseball, but today, if you're a hitter and you get into a slump, you've got all kinds of analytics. You've got all kinds of video. They're going to tell you exactly what angle you were holding your bat at and how long your stride was toward the pitcher and how quickly you pop your hips open and what the average exit velocity is of a ball that you hit hard, you know, and all of those things. And they can help you tweak that. But you're not going to be able to do it unless you actually go back and review that tape. Look at the stuff. You know, it's not just about correcting what's wrong, it's about reinforcing what's right. And sometimes it's as simple as having a library of really good wins that you can play for them too.
Absolutely. And I think I want to touch on what you said. You do this every Friday, right? So we found success in being consistent at listening and also role playing, right? So we would consistently listen during our meetings, our sales meetings, and we would also consistently role play during our sales meetings where everybody was there. And it was really good because as we started implementing this into our meeting, not only were the three of us giving feedback, but then also their peers were giving feedback. And everybody knew it was going to happen each and every time that we met as sales, but they started to build a level of confidence. But the times we weren't always consistent, we didn't do it because it's not always fun. That's the thing too. It's not always fun. Is we would see drops in productivity. So I think it's better for people that don't do it just to start and doing something. And I think also one thing we learned is doing it in bite-sized chunks. It's very hard to listen to a whole call. So we started breaking that down into, okay, we're just going to listen to the first 2 minutes, and are they asking their discovery questions? And then we're going to move into the middle of the call. And then are they doing the qualifying things at the very end? And even with that, we highly recommend, and we started using, you know, something that analyzes calls, that tracks the patterns, that highlights keys for improvements, which was AI. And there's different AIs out there. We have Zoom phones. I know they have one called, it's called Michael Zoom Accelerator or something like that.
Yeah, Zoom Accelerator.
So being able to have that data pull and give you reports, and then you can also send snippets to your salespeople. So you're listening, you're role playing, and now you're sending them feedback weekly so that they can get that. But I don't want to just say sales. We actually started doing this for our client advisors, which some people call account managers or service people too. And we because of this, we ended up losing one of our people because they were not comfortable with getting better, right? So we always tie things back to our core values, and one of our core values is to compete and continue to develop our skills and get better. And they weren't comfortable with it when we started listening to, to their calls.
One thing, David, I want to touch on that you kind of touched on. So I make a lot of YouTube videos, and after I'm done with the YouTube video, I'm like, I nailed that. That was great. And then when I go back through and listen to it, I'm like, I should have done this, or I should have emphasized this, or I should have said that. Just by listening, I can think of 10 to 15 different things I can do better, and I make notes, and then the next video it is better. And so I continue to build on that. And that's the thing, is like in the moment you feel like you're nailing it, but if you take the time to go back and listen, you find those spots where you can improve. And it's funny because when we listen to them with with our team, right away, like we'll listen to a 30-second clip, we'll pause it, and we'll say, okay, what do you think? And we have one team member specifically who will be like, yep, I should have done this, I should have done that, and I should have done that. And she'll make those notes, and then the next time she's even better. So no matter how perfect you think you are, there's always room to improve, but you're only going to know you have room for improvement if you go back and listen to those calls.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's probably important, and I don't know that I've heard you guys talk about this, and again, we could probably get into the weeds here, but even knowing how to set up role play, like what's the topic going to be? What are the things that we're looking for this person to say? I mean, I can remember going through this as a young producer where we were essentially given a case study that the agency principal had created. And the whole idea was we were to go in and have a conversation with them as if we were qualifying them as a prospect in a first meeting, and just to see, like, what are we hitting on? How well are we representing the firm's core values, quite honestly, and the sales process? Did I pick up on the fact that this person actually has an employee benefits need based on something that was very matter of factly mentioned in a conversation? It wasn't always very obvious what you should be hearing. They did a really good job of mimicking what a real fast-paced first meeting conversation would look like. And I can remember we would go through and do that on a regular basis. And I can tell you, it definitely made me a better listener when I would go into sales calls, but it also gave them an opportunity to give me the best way to overcome an objection or the best way to navigate around whatever the issue was. So, I mean, when you guys are putting together these role plays, do you have like a standardized thing that you go by in terms of, what they're going to be, or is it kind of, hey, let's just make it up on the fly as we go? And I want to be clear, I don't know that either one of them's, right or wrong, because there's a lot of times we're having conversations that are on the fly. So you have to think that way, but I'm interested as to how you approached that.
Yeah, so one thing we did, and this is just one of the many, this is a perfect case study for ChatGPT. We would say, okay, what do we want and need to work on? What do we want our salespeople to work on, or what do we want, our account managers to work on? And so I would go to ChatGPT and say, hey, we're doing some role play. I've already trained it knows we're insurance and all that, but we're doing this specific role play. We want to work on this specific scenario. Please give me 10 different scenarios for how we can use this. So then whoever's playing the part, whether it was Caleb or Jeremy, they know exactly, who they are, their demographics, where we're trying to get them to. And ChatGPT can just spit out all of those different scenarios.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then one other thing, shout out to Josh Braun. We're big Josh Braun fans in terms of asking poke the bear questions, right? So that's what most of our role play focuses around, is helping them ask and learn how to ask those poke the bear questions to pull out what our issue or what our problem actually is. And so in role play, like, we'll start, and if they don't start out right within 5 seconds, we're stopping them and saying, no, you need to ask this type of question. You need to ask a poke the bear question. We'll give them different examples. But we don't when we're doing role play, like we're doing it, it's uncomfortable for everybody. So we're not just going to let little things slide. We're going to stop you and correct you right away.
You just reminded me I need to message Braun because we're supposed to do a live deal and we were looking for a studio and we're actually going to do it at Ciara's place down there
Oh, nice.
in the Miami area. I just got to get it on our calendars for a time that works for both of us. But yeah, I mean, it's important to be able to have those things that poke the bear questions. Like I've got a laundry list of them, but I also know what they are because I've been doing them for 20 years. Your team doesn't know that. You know, they might go on some calls with you and pick one up here or there, but having structure around it and being able to recreate that same thing every single time with predictable results is really important in any process, right? I mean, that's the point of all of this, is to have standardization so that everybody's doing the same thing all of the time. And there's no real reason to try and figure out another way to do it if you already know what works or what works to your satisfaction.
What it also did, David, is it helped, at least with our salespeople, be more efficient, right? So they could actually see, are you really qualifying these people? Or these people we really want as our ideal client? And as you listen to those calls and you are able to hear and get that feedback, you start to narrow down who these people are. And I'm sure you've done that with you talk about it all the time, is finding your ideal client, especially in the commercial space, right? Is weeding the people out that you really don't want to do. And it helped us refine that and expedite that process in finding our ideal client.
And one thing, David, you said, yeah, I know what all of them are because I've been doing this for so long. So really what the role play and the listening to calls is doing is just expediting that process, right? Because if you're not doing the role play, you're only getting in a certain amount of reps. We're allowing you to double those reps, get the repetition in quicker, more experience. Now suddenly, instead of being a 5-year vet, you're in theory a 10-year vet because you've gone through the role play.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's such a great return on that investment of time. It just blows my mind people are so reluctant to do that. I mean, to me, that's the most important part. You can train people to do whatever you want them to do and then just assume they're going to do it. But if there's not that accountability piece in the back end to reinforce it, listen to the calls, and then if they didn't get it right, have them role play to show that they do understand what it is you want, and then hold them accountable to that standard moving forward. It takes effort. It's not just slinging insurance policies and collecting the commissions on them. It's building an organization with a real structure and a good culture, which ultimately is going to be the one that scales the fastest and the most profitably. But anything that's worth doing, I say this all the time, you got to slow down to speed up. It might feel like you're dragging your feet or it's taking longer to get to where you want to be, until one day you wake up and you're past where you wanted to be and realized you got there twice as quick as what you thought you would.
Yep. 100%. And I'll just say this, if you're in a virtual agency and you're not listening to phone calls and you have no idea what your people are saying, that's insane. You have to know what your people are saying.
But it's
Yeah.
overwhelming. So we always recommend, Michael and I were talking to someone, we said, just start off with the first 2 minutes. Just listen to how the call goes the first 2 minutes. You don't have to listen to the whole 20, 30-minute call. So I think the best advice I would give, just at least start listening to part of the call and then work through it. If you don't have the technology, if you don't have the manpower to do it, that's fine. At least set aside a time like you do every Friday and at least listen to part of the call and give feedback. You will still see exponential growth just by doing that.
Yeah, same thing when you're coaching with salespeople, right? Listen to the opening. How do you open the call? What are you doing to get the hook, set to begin with? And you can do that in the first 30 seconds of most, sales calls, whether it be appointment setting or, you're actually having a conversation with somebody. Then you can move into the meat of the conversation and figure out what the offer is. What are you asking for? What are you hoping to get in return? How did you present it? How did you assure that you're going to get that buy-in from the other person? And then ultimately, how did you close it? Did you define next steps? Like, you can literally go through all of these pieces and parts relatively easily. And if you know that's what you're listening for, especially if you're dealing with the beginning or the end, you don't have to listen to the whole call. You can just, like you said, listen to the first minute, listen to the last minute, whatever else. But sometimes you have to listen to everything in between too. So Michael, I gotta believe, man, you're 5 for 5 and giving away valuable stuff. What do you got left in the coffer?
Yep. So, hey, a chat GPT is not your thing. Don't worry. We're going to give you a bunch of different scenarios and outlines that you can use in your agency. And then we're also going to give you our guide / process for listening to calls, how we do it, how we set it up. That way you can at least start doing something. Because like I said, if you're not doing something and listening to phone calls and role play, you're not going where you want to go. That's on the website. Check it out.
All right. Well, we have had 6 different episodes, 6 weeks of talking about remote work. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter by now, I'm losing hope, but I have one more chance to urge you to do so. So when you go to the website to get those free resources, make sure you sign up for the newsletter. You never know what you might win when you do. Guys, thanks so much for taking the time to record these. This is valuable information that agencies are going to be able to use to make themselves better. And, you didn't have to do it, but you're doing it. So thank you for that. Thank you for opening up kind of your processes and procedures, and even offering to give some of this stuff away. I know it cost you money to build it, and the fact you're willing to be generous enough to give it away for nothing speaks volumes about the culture that you've built in your firm. So really appreciate you taking the time to do these, and look forward to getting the feedback from those of you out there listening. We'll catch you next week. See ya.